Welcome back to Lit versus Genre. I am Steve,
I'm Jeff.
and it is time to make our way back to Elman's Field. If we can get there, if we can make it, that is the
Through the
question.
Westwood. Why did you live so far west,
I
guys?
know that was a bad decision, mistake.
Mistakes were made.
You
Lessons
don't
learned.
want that long commute. You know what I'm saying? Like, who
This is
wants
what
that?
happened.
Who's got time for that?
Well, we got the time in this chapter.
Yeah, we
Because
do, I
that's
guess.
what we do.
All right,
So,
so he has made it back. Oh wait, now Jeff, and did he make his little stretcher in the previous chapter, or does he do that here?
that is a good question. I believe he makes it here. This is where he makes
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah. This is where
Um,
he lashes together his a
hmm,
little stretcher thing, which
yep.
Jordan calls a litter, which I was not familiar with that term, but I got that it was like a little stretcher that he's gonna drag along the
Yeah.
ground or whatever.
Yeah, I think a litter is just a stretcher you drag.
Oh,
But
okay, okay.
maybe that's from just me reading multiple fantasy novels.
Okay, so here was the line I talked about last video. How many times had he daydreamed about wearing a sword and having adventures?
Mm,
I don't
mm.
know. Previously, I would have said approaching zero would have been my my guess for
Who
that. But
who
apparently, he
are
has
you?
been dreaming about this stuff for a while.
Who are you, Rand? Who are you really? Um, for sure, for sure. We were talking in the last chapter a bit about sort of the stress, the nerves that we get in that particular section of the book, and obviously this is, pardon me, continuing onward in this one when Rand's thinking about the Trollocs, thinking about the Fade. Um, Something I didn't mention in the last chapter that I think that Jordan does an effective job with is showing skills or comparisons that are relevant to the character. So in last chapter we did see Rand trying to convince himself it was like sneaking through the forest to play tag, right? And we can
Hmm.
imagine a kid lives in a forest and do that with his friends. And then here we've got like frozen like a rabbit's that's seen a hawk's shadow. That comparison seems appropriate to Rand there. So I just think these little moments, flesh out this concept that, Rand is from here, Rand has lived here. And so when he sees and experiences things, he's going to compare them to the life experience he has had.
He is a
And
country
this is
boy.
exactly, exactly.
All right. Yeah, no, I like that too. Yeah, and I did kind of notice there's like a lot of when Rand thinks of things, he thinks of them in sort of animal terms. Like even that
Hmm.
slithering
Yeah,
across the lawn on his belly and was like, "You're bro, you
right.
weren't slithering." But I could see how he'd be like, "I'm going to use this metaphor." I think he talked about um stalking a rabbit, how quiet he would be when
Hmm.
stalking a rabbit or something, and then we
Exactly.
get the rabbit in the hawk's shadow. That yeah, that was pretty cool.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think we're just seeing that carry over. Some of those are from last chapter. This one, the one we're talking about right now, Rabbit and Hawk Shadow, that's very early on in this one. Um, so on and so forth. And I also believe things too, like I know there's a little bit early in this chapter, but paragraph 2, it says, a scalding fever like that could kill or leave a man a husk of what he had been. Just little moments like that help remind me that they're further removed in this village. I mean, yeah, they've got Nene, the wisdom, the healer, so on and so forth, but this idea that a fever can kill somebody or leave them useless. And again, I think it helps put us in the time. Though, of course, I think it's also interesting that we learn that there seems to just be this kind of small cut. And Rand's really confused by it because he's seen his dad, who of course has been described as, being this like rock, keep working, past, something way worse than that. So there's also this little mystery of, why is this scratch creating this, big fever? So I just feel like there's a lot going on there in a small amount of time.
Right. It's not that big a mystery though, right? I mean, it's like a poison, whatever,
Sure.
scratch or whatever.
Full mystery, Steve. We have nothing to go off of to figure
Yeah.
out what could cause this.
All right. This is another funny thing. I like this where he's like, every
Mhm.
scrap of branch against branch, every rustle of pine needle brought him to a halt. Well,
Hmm.
clearly not everyone. Because here's the other thing. I think it's effective, but then also I'm incredulous about at the same time. I'm like, there's no way to be sneaky in this situation. Like, and there's so many things stacked against him being
Right.
sneaky in this situation. You're literally dragging your
Hmm.
father through
Right.
the woods and not on the road because they'll see you in the road. So you're off in the brush
Hmm.
dragging this dude through. There is no way to do that quietly, right? Like,
Right.
how could you possibly? And then, like, every scraper branch gets. I mean, I would just feel like that would be constant. That he's like, oh, there's
Yeah.
sound all over the place here. And then on top of that, your dad's babbling the whole time too. And there's like some parts where I was like, when did he stop babbling when Man in Black rode by? Because like I'm pretty sure he's been babbling this whole time.
He
So
seems to go in and out. He seems to go in and out.
and like I said,
Um,
it's effective because you're like, oh, he's gonna get caught because how could he
right.
not? But then he kind of doesn't get caught. So then I'm like, I don't know, man. This seems unlikely to have worked out
Yeah,
this
I
well.
hear you about that line because I feel it's effective because I can imagine someone like you hear something and you stop, then you hear
Right,
something you
right, right,
stop.
right.
It like shows this like tenseness of this incredibly scary situation. And again, it's more done through showing. I mean, instead of describing the fear as an ice in his belly or something like that, which I'm sure happens later, we're more getting to see like what he's doing because of the fear. So I feel like that's a cool way to show. But it does sound too extreme, right? When it's like every scrape, but then it's like, how do you rate that so it's not as extreme? Are you saying like every loud scrape,
Right,
that
right.
he heard? So it's like you sort of war with this. Okay, what I'm writing isn't 100% true,
Mm.
but this phrasing is legit, like creates a feel, which I want. And is it worth it to overcomplicate it to make it more real? Like, will that diminish the feel because they'll get caught up in the extra wording and think more about it? So I've definitely struggled with that sometimes as a writer, being like, well, I'm not fully describing what's happening, but does that ruin the rhythm of the sentence or the paragraph? So I just wonder how
Yeah.
much he was thinking about that here.
How we talked about that in writing group, I feel like a little bit, and I think it does come back to like a tension between
Mhm.
you want certain things to happen. Like clearly in this chapter, he needs to get
Mhm.
his characters down the road somehow. He needs
Right.
Tam to be injured and babbling, and it's very important
Mhm.
that he's babbling because that's our exposition. Um,
Mhm.
for our mystery
Sure.
in
And
this
it helps break
chapter,
up this. I think it
and
helps break up the scene too. I feel
say
like it could kind of be boring if it was just him dragging the whole time.
well,
But please
sure,
continue.
sure, yeah, absolutely. And then you also want to have this drive by, this near
Mhm.
brush with
Yeah.
being caught. But then because you want all these things, you're not being authentically in the moment. Right? Because like would all of this have gone down this way? If you're really there, this is loud as shit. Him walking down the thing. Like how could it not be?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how slowly he's pulling it. So maybe if there had been a little more time talking about that, because like I definitely have not spent my life living near forests. Like, I grew up in Florida, there were beaches, you know what I'm saying? But now that I'm out here in Oregon and, we go trail hiking, it is always fascinating to me to like now see like what does the forest look like? How close are the trees? You know what I mean? And it's
Mm.
not that all forests look like the one near me, but there is a lot of undergrowth that can happen. And of course, the time of year has an impact on the number of leaves on the ground, right? But if it's rained and it's soggy because it rains a lot here in Oregon, then the leaves aren't going to make the same sort of sound. And if there is a lot of underbrush, I can't imagine him dragging through. I think, yeah, may have some time had been spent on how slowly he was moving through to minimize the sound. The part that struck me is it does seem like the fade, the man in black looks straight at him. And so it's like, how is he not seen in that moment, right?
See, that's interesting.
Um,
That part didn't bother me because if he's in the light if Man in
Right.
Black is in the moonlight, which he is,
Right.
and Tam's in the shadow, you look into the shadow from the light, you can't see anything, you know.
Totally.
But this dude
Right.
might have magic eyes that I don't know about. But like in that moment, I was like, okay, I buy that. That seems fine to me.
I think I would have liked one of these little animal examples then, like
Yeah,
about the difference in light, right there, because I put that together as well, and it's not like it broke me out of the story completely or anything. But I think if there was one moment that was a little harder for me to believe, it was that one. Whereas it seems like Rand does hear them coming, which the Trollocs seem large, and in that moment they are all making noise. So if there's like a dozen of them marching in lockstep, I can imagine him hearing them before they heard him, kind of thing. It's tricky though because we've also heard they have better hearing. So yeah, it's tough to put all these things together and still allow Randis to escape,
yeah.
right?
I didn't get so much that Rand heard him coming, but I feel like what happened was he stopped to
Mm-hmm.
listen to Tam. And like Tam pulls him closer and he feels the like heat on his cheek, and
Right.
he's telling him this stuff about the battles or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, so Rand actually cuts him off, so we don't even get what Rand heard.
Oh yeah, because I actually got caught on that too, because it says the sound came again. I'm
Right,
like, wait, where was the sound the first time?
right.
Right.
Where
So
was
yeah,
it?
that
Was it?
that fascinating. That's fascinating.
Yeah, so yeah, and I read over that, yeah, pretty quick for some reason,
You're
and,
right
and I
there. The
don't know if
sound
that's
came
like
again.
another implied thing, like we're just supposed to imply that he heard it
Yeah,
earlier. If so,
I
like
think
how much
I think you're
earlier?
right. I think it's like the Perrin line from before, where he's like saying, we saw that before, and you said you liked it
Right,
previously. Miranda was talking, and he keeps getting louder, and so we're like inferring that the other person hasn't heard
right,
him yet,
right, right.
right? And so
Um,
here, yeah, I think we are meant to just infer. I mean, could there have been maybe a few more words to help us out there? Sure. But yeah,
but I
that
think
that
more
part definitely.
importantly, I feel like he just got lucky as hell here that he had
Yeah.
already stopped moving
Right.
to listen to
Right.
his dad, and then that's why they don't hear him traipsing through the woods, because they're
Yeah.
again,
Hmm.
in my mind, there'd be no way to do that quietly. And like maybe what I don't know, quote unquote, fix it, but I think maybe if instead of being scared of branch against branch, if he was freaking out about how much noise he was making, then
Right.
I would be like, okay, that makes sense to me that you would be
Right.
freaking out
I
about the
think it would
noise
just be
you
all of it.
yourself are making doing this, because it's gotta make
Right.
noise. I can't believe like he's literally dragging a dude through the
Yeah.
woods, you
It
know?
is. It is. Well, and I would think it would also catch on things and
Right.
stuff like that.
And he does kind of talk about that, the roots, and like
Right.
there's
Definitely.
a lot of
Yeah.
description. The ground does not seem clear because he describes kind of tripping over the roots a little
I
and
think we
doing that
get
sort of
more of
stuff.
his tiredness. You know what I mean? We get
Uh-huh.
Rand tripping over the roots, not so much the litter
Yeah.
catching the roots.
Yeah.
But again, it's like where's that balance, right? I know some people don't like reading Robert Jordan because they feel it is too descriptive, and obviously Tolkien
Oh,
gets
really?
that leveled against him a lot as well. The people don't want to read Tolkien because too much time is spent like describing a table or something.
Man,
So
all
but
our
it's a
attention
question.
spans are just garbage now at this
Well,
point.
it's been that way for years. But I mean, sure, we could say our generation has terrible attention spans and it continues to get worse, right? Um, but I was just going to say that I don't think that's a valid excuse necessarily. I think it's just something that people are thinking about, like how much time to spend on this and where to choose to spend the time. And I think we're both saying each of us would have liked a little more time spent on what sort of noise is that litter making? How does that
Right.
make him feel? That sort of thing. Yeah,
Okay,
for
so
sure.
here's another. I think I skipped some extra description of Trollocs in the last chapter, but here we get
Mm,
another one, and
yeah.
we've added beaks now. That some of
Mm,
them have. So
oh, yeah.
so now these things are just like an amalgam of like any random animal parts
Right.
that they could be, is what I'm kind of just imagining,
Hmm.
which I'm
Yeah.
interested, which I like, and I'm
Hmm.
interested in, yeah, what the show will do with those, like whether they'll
Yeah.
make them more uniform, which I think would kind of be a shame. It would be
Oh,
way more
that would,
fun if like they were all just different animal parts to like every single one of them.
Righteous anger welled up in me at even the
Ah!
thought that they would be the same. I was gonna say there is a part. Where
We
is
will
there?
have to do a check-in episode.
He
We'll
says,
just call it the
he says
Jeff
that.
ranting about television episode, whatever it
Oh my goodness.
airs. I
We can do
promise
that
you,
one.
listener, we will do that. We will be on the air as soon as possible with Jeff
This is
rants.
a promise we're making, a pledge, if you will. But no, I was going to say there is a part where he does drop feathers. So
Mm-mm.
I think it's
Yep,
earlier where he talks about
I remember.
like fur or feathers. So then here we get the beak, right? So
Yeah.
we get this. We're just seeing like flashes of different animal parts, but yeah, this kind of solidifies. Oh, some look like birds. You know what I mean? Which is awesome, obviously.
Yeah, I dig it. Okay, so what happens here? So yeah, and through this whole thing, well, he puts his hand over Tam's mouth
Right.
initially.
Yeah.
But then there was another part where I was like, was Tam babbling through this like whole thing?
Yeah, you mentioned that. You mentioned there was a part you were wondering if he was
Right.
still talking.
Yeah, it must have been when like the Man in Black then doubles back,
He sneaks
giving
back.
you like a sense that he had sensed something
Mhm.
or heard
Right.
something, because the horse comes back and the horse makes no sound because they're just like
Right.
ghost horse. Um,
Mhm.
and then at this point, he's crouched above his father. So I don't
Right.
think he has his hand on his mouth anymore. He has one hand on his sword.
Yeah, it says he's just started to straighten.
Right.
We'll have to find that one. Where was that? Yeah, I was gonna say I did have to go back and reread the direction that the writer was coming from to then right away. I do love that the writer comes back in his silence this time.
Mm-hmm.
It just like adds this, extra beat. Where is it?
Yeah.
It says, at long last, he drew a deep breath and began to straighten. So yeah, we don't know if I would sort of assume his hand is still over his father's mouth, but sure, like some description of his dad moving his mouth or the, breath from his father,
Right.
the heat from, we don't get anything of that. We do just get Rand's hand tightened convulsively, so his other hand could still be over his father's mouth.
Right. I guess it happens like he rides off towards mountains of mist, ransagged, gulping air and scrubbing cold sweat off of his face with his sleeve. He did not care anymore about why the Trollocs had come. He never found out why. If he never found out why, that would be fine, just as long as it was all ended. With a shake, he gathered himself, hastily checking his father. Tam was still murmuring, and then at that point, I was like, "Was that bro murmuring the whole time?" Right?
Oh, I see. Well, yeah, it would have been murmuring under his hand, right?
Yeah, I guess that's what happened. Okay, so let's talk about this Tam. The
This is what
the
we've been waiting for.
info that Tam in his poisoned, delirious state drops here.
We call it the boom.
Yes, he drops the boom. But first, we got to drop some more new fantasy words that we haven't heard yet at this point, because we haven't got enough of those. No way.
Dude, we're just getting started.
We get this tree, okay, and we get a sapling of this tree of life. But this is also a story that Rand has heard before, but we didn't really hear about it in the previous chapters. And it belonged to the Green Man. I like that too. Okay, Green Man, new dude. I gotta keep track of, and that we will learn about later. And so what? And this again is one reading. So what I'm getting from this is that there's some sort of battle going on. Some people bring this tree and they're like, plant this tree. Don't F with this tree. This tree, you got to keep it around. And then this dude, what's his name?
Lemon, right?
Lou. Oh, no, not Harl Luhan.
That's what they're talking about, the party.
Who's the king or whatever that
No,
Rant Tam is so mad at? Tam's like, this guy is an idiot.
Yeah, they Laman's sin. Yeah, it's actually, well, maybe he says it again later, but there was the part where he screamed, well, not screams, where he says they came over the dragon wall like a flood.
Right.
How many died for Laman's sin?
Right. Right.
So
Right.
that's back. That's back a couple pages.
Hmm.
But yeah.
How many cities burned before they faced the
Mhm.
truth? Before
Right.
nations stood against them.
Hmm.
So this is where you're like, okay, like Tam has seen some shit here before. He's been in the
Right.
trenches before, and he's
Right.
pissed
Oh,
at
there we go.
this.
Laman's pride. Blood. The price for Laman's pride
Mm-mm.
is right around the Avendesora part.
Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we did get a little setup with Laman previously, like who's Laman, and now we're seeing it again.
Mm-hmm.
But
So,
good job with the story.
oh,
I think
I
you did
kind
this.
of have it okay. 500 years
Yeah.
it grew. 500 years of peace.
Right.
With those who make no peace. Well, okay,
Mhm.
that's a kind of self-contradictory, but
Right.
and then why did he cut it down? Good question. Why would you do
Right.
that?
Why?
And so I guess this is all something that we will
Mhm.
learn about later too. Okay, but here comes the important thing, of course. I don't know if this was happening in the same battle. There's a
Mhm.
battle in the snow. Don't know
Yeah.
where that's happening. And it gets dropped that, you know, Rand is really little baby Clark Kent found by the kindly Kents here on
Oh
the
my goodness.
battle. And, they take the child. Um, should have been dead, but no, we don't have any children of our own. This was really like the Ma and Pa Kent part, no child of their own. That I was
It
like,
is. As soon as you said it, I was like, oh my goodness, that's
yeah,
exactly what it is.
always wanted children. You knew you wanted to
Always wanted
carry.
children.
That is like
Yeah.
spot word for word. Jerry
Yeah.
Siegel and Joe Shuster right there. And so okay, and then like at first I was like, Rand sort of doesn't react initially, where I was like, dude, you realize what information was just dropped here, but he actually does quite realize it, and he
Mhm.
was like, who am I? Who am
Yeah, I mean,
I?
he does fall to his knees
Oh,
when he
did
hears
he
it.
fall to his knees?
Yeah. He goes, suddenly Rand's legs lost a little strength they had. Scrambling, he fell to his knees. Um, but he was not aware of either. If a Trolloc had leapt in front of him right then, he would have just stared at
Right,
it
right, right,
or
right.
leaped up in front of him. So I mean, yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, it's a moment, right? What I was curious about was, did you feel it was
Oh,
too on the nose?
well, I mean, I think this is fine. Let me talk about this. He was not aware of either, because
Yeah.
I did highlight that.
Okay.
Tam moaning and the strip
Mhm.
cutting into his shoulder, but he was not aware. This sentence, I don't think.
The age-old cheat.
Yeah, it's kind of the cheat of the POV, right? Like,
Right.
so I was like, we're close third person in all of this, so it's hard to
Right.
talk about what the character's not aware of. Anyway, not
Mhm.
a big deal, whatever.
No, completely. I
Um,
mean, I think it's good to bring up because it just shows like this is something people do, right?
mm-hmm.
Like when we want to say that things are happening around somebody, but they're so focused on something else they don't even notice. We still want to tell you what's going on, but then like
Right.
contrasted by the fact that they don't notice it, but that's cheating close third person. I was gonna say there's what a lot of people do instead is they'll go with the barely noticed, right?
Mm-mm-mm.
Like it was like a buzzing in his ears, barely noticed the words that the
Right.
other person was saying, right? Something like that, right? This not that's bold, right? Because that's just like I'm straight up POV cheating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care, right? Like so, yeah, no, it's definitely a
Yeah.
bold.
I
Um,
and that's an interesting discussion about like breaking those kind of rules, and
yeah,
like, sometimes you're gonna break rules for a fact.
right, yeah,
Does it work
exactly.
here because it gets you to be like,
Mhm.
this has had such a profound effect on
Right, right.
I don't know if it hit me. Maybe if I was reading a bit more carefully, it would have hit me that like, oh, he has super registered this. Um,
Okay.
but I it sort of didn't do it to make it go like he has fallen to his knees out of like a oh my goodness moment for some reason. I don't know why. I guess it works.
I think we've encountered something interesting in both these chapters, which is Jordan is doing a lot, at least as far as I can tell, a lot of description of actions to show emotion,
Yeah.
as opposed to internal thoughts about fear or dying. At least in this particular part, right? There's some, right? There's the couple, but more like the way he shows Rand shock here is right that Rand falls down, and then Rand thinks that if a Trolloc had appeared right then, he would have just died. Like he wouldn't. He's so shocked. He can't
But here's
even
the
move.
problem, and I think this is why I didn't register it, because we've already just talked about how exhausted and worn out and like done he is. So when his legs lost what little strength they had, like if he was going full out here, he's like, yeah, this is like, this is my aerobic exercise for the day. I'm pumping it down this trail, and then he says something, and then you fall to your knees, then you're like, I know why you fell to your knees. If you're like on the verge of collapse already, and then you lost what little strength, I mean, I'm expecting him to already have lost, what strength they had the whole time.
Got you. Interesting. Well, yeah, that is, I suppose, one of the dangers of using action to show emotion is that people could, ascribe those actions to another cause, as opposed to the cause you might be writing for.
Yeah, I mean, if you set it up that way, right? Like, right. I think you're right that it's admirable that, he doesn't want to say Rand was shocked by this revelation, right? That would suck. Like, you don't want to do that. You want to show it with action. I think the slight problem here is that action needs to be contrasted. It needs to be something that would be unexpected in that moment in order for that to register the emotion, versus something that like I was just expecting to happen at any point.
Right. I think you're going to get some people with it, but there's a danger that it can be construed another way. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's like it's not guaranteeing that hit for sure. It's interesting that this is what we're talking about. This is not what I was expecting to talk about. I was expecting to talk about how much information Tam gives in his speech, considering how close to the chest Jordan has been playing everything. I just wondered if that contrast in storytelling like struck you here, stood out differently, or if it was just like not even a thing for you.
I mean, yeah, he's given me the one big revelation.
Right, like
the rest of it again is fantasy gobbledygook to me. Like I don't know like what any of it means, kind of in the same way that I haven't known what any of these stories mean.
Oh, totally. I just mean like baby cry, we found it, should have been dead, you had always wanted a child, right?
Yeah.
Like that. You'd take it close to your heart. Rand is a good name, right? Like, I mean, this is, I don't know how much more on the nose.
Frankly, let me say this, Jeff. I am thankful for it because I'm not a huge fan of this. Like, ooh, let me piece together your your little mystery that you made. Like, I don't think that's really that fun. But I know you think it's a lot of fun. So how did you feel about this?
It did feel, this to me was odd. It did feel that compared to how hidden everything else has been, the fact that we do have someone babbling incoherently, that they would just happen to say the exact series of things to completely and almost utterly reveal like a truth like this.
That's a little tropish to be like, oh, in my haze, I am sleep talking and I tell you everything you need to know, sort of thing.
To me, if there is one thing that would be natural to be more hidden, it would be this. It would be someone saying random words that you would then be trying to piece together what the heck they meant. But I do wonder, most things we read are not first drafts, right? Like, what was this another thing where he only dropped like 2 random parts?
And his editor was like, no.
You gotta give us. They were like, no more. No more, Jordan. You gotta just say it on this one and this weekend. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know.
I wonder if that would be interesting. I mean, everything you read, you kind of have to wonder like how
Right.
much
Exactly.
is changed, what the editors said. I think like the one big one that we do have access to is like the like Raymond Carver. If you ever, I think they've actually published like a lot of like what his short story was initially, and then what it was after his editor
Right.
got through with it, which was like slashing something like 60% of what was written in the story.
Wild.
And so,
Wild.
yeah, you wonder about those sort of things. It's always kind of funny to think about.
For sure. I feel like I imagine the meeting like you gotta give us this one. You gotta like but yeah. So I was just curious if that
Yeah,
was something you noticed.
I
It's
was,
interesting to hear that you like that.
yeah, I mean, I get what, like when I was reading, I was like, okay, he's like this babbling trope is kind of a trope and giving me this information. I didn't mind it in the least having it spoon fed to me a little bit too, because we had telegraphed he's taller than everybody in the village. He's got different color eyes. Yeah, like I knew Tam was not his dad. I was already like on board with that, so it wasn't like such a like big reveal sort of thing.
Right.
All right, out of the woods, into the woods, out of the woods. So we'll see what happens. So here's my prediction, though. Like all those Trollocs coming in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. Maybe I'm probably wrong about this, but I'm imagining they've already like ripped through the like village or whatever. But maybe not. Maybe there's a bypass or something on the road around the
No,
village.
no, that is a good prediction because that was actually a part that I reread because I was like, wait a second, which direction is the Myrddraal going back to? And it's like, yeah, the Trollocs and the Myrddraal coming from the direction of the village. Go past Rand,
Did
then the
you consult the map? Is my question.
As soon as you said it, then that's what I was like, no, I did not. I should have. I should have. I forget that there's a map of Emmons Field.
Yeah.
Because maybe I'm wrong, just completely wrong about this, but I feel like the original didn't have one. I mean, and again, I've got an original copy of the book that does, so I'm probably just an idiot. But it was really and truly for me like the west versus not, and like where their farm is. But yeah, I should have realized that they're coming from the east, traveling west, right? Yeah. But to your point, since if we consult the map, there does not appear to be any other road, it does seem like they are coming from the direction of the village. And Jordan does say Rand doesn't even think for a moment that they're people from the village, which would make you think, oh, they're coming from the direction.
Right.
So yeah, and I think we've also got to set up too where Rand is briefly imagining what Winter Night is like in the town,
like
with
all the fun and
singing and all that, right? So maybe yes, maybe.
Okay, that's my prediction. He's gonna come across like a battle zone or something when he gets in there. It wouldn't even be a battle zone because how much resistance are these people gonna put up? Come on, they're like, we've never killed anyone. We've never killed anyone before.
You can't beat the Trollocs.
You can't. You can't do it.
Until next time, then, out of the woods.
Out of the woods. See you next time, everybody.